All right, if you're putting medical devices on the UK market, you are definitely going to want to pay close attention. The MHRA is completely overhauling its fee structure, and there's one specific change that could seriously increase your costs. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what's happening and, more importantly, how you can get ready and avoid any unnecessary hits to your budget. This is the big question every single manufacturer should be asking themselves right now. Starting in April 2026, that old flat fee model, it's gone. Your annual MHRA registration fees will now be based entirely on how your device portfolio is categorized. And believe me, if you get this wrong, you could be looking at a major and very unexpected hike in your costs.
So here's our game plan to get you up to speed. We'll start with the deadline. Then we'll zero in on the one single rule that really drives everything. After that, we'll look at the 4 main reasons your devices get split into different fee categories. We'll clear up what doesn't cause a split. And finally, we'll walk through how to avoid the most common and costly mistakes.
First things first, the hard deadline. The MHRA has put a date on it. This new annual fee structure for registering medical devices is officially kicking in from April 2026. This gives you a really clear runway to get your portfolio reviewed and make sure all your registrations are squared away. And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. Your fees are going to be calculated based on one thing and one thing only: how many unique GMDN Level 2 categories your devices fall under. From our vantage point at I3C Global, we see this as the single most important thing for manufacturers to get a handle on if they want to predict and manage their regulatory costs in the UK.
So how does this all work in the real world? Let's cut through all the noise and focus on the one rule that truly matters. It all comes down to the official GMDN hierarchy. That's it.
So what in the world is a GMDN Level 2 category? Well, think of it like a big bucket, or a main drawer in a giant filing cabinet. The Global Medical Device Nomenclature System organizes every medical device into this big family tree, this hierarchy. Level 2 is one of those broad, parent-level groupings, and that's the level the MHRA is going to be counting. Okay, now this is where we need to clear up some major misconceptions. The MHRA is not going to be looking at your device's risk class, or the specific wording on your CE certificate, or your slick product branding, or even your marketing blurbs. No. The calculation comes down to one thing and one thing only: the official GMDN hierarchy that your registered GMDN term links back to. It's a mechanical process.
Okay, so if it's all about these GMDN Level 2 parent categories, what actually causes your products to get split into separate buckets that you have to pay for? Well, there are 4 fundamental dividing lines you really need to know about. First up is having a different intended purpose. This is a perfect example. Surgical sutures and wound dressings, they might be sold by the same company, but they do fundamentally different jobs, right? One closes a wound from the inside, the other protects it from the outside. So in the GMDN world, they belong to totally different Level 2 parents, and boom, that means 2 separate fees right there.
The second big dividing line is active versus non-active. Basically, does it need a power source to work? A simple manual scalpel? That's non-active. A powered surgical handpiece? That's active. That simple difference creates a hard wall between them in the GMDN hierarchy, putting them into different Level 2 categories. You just can't group them together. Third, we have implantability. Is the device meant to go inside the human body or not? An orthopedic implant that's placed inside a patient is, by definition, completely different from an external brace that's worn on the outside. Even if they're used for the same clinical reason, their GMDN codes will trace back to different Level 2 parents, and that triggers separate fees. And the final key split, and honestly, this is where a lot of people get tripped up, involves kits and procedure packs. A procedure pack gets its very own, distinct Level 2 category. It's totally separate from the categories of the individual bits and pieces inside it. So if you register the pack, and you also register the scalpels or dressings inside it separately, you've just created multiple fee-bearing categories for yourself. So we've covered the 4 main reasons for a split. Now, let's flip that on its head and get some clarity on what doesn't create a new fee, because this is where a lot of the questions, and frankly, a lot of the anxiety comes from. So you can take a deep breath, because none of this stuff is going to trigger a new fee. Having different models or sizes of the same device type, pushing out a software update, changing your labels or your instructions for use, or even having different brand names, none of that creates a new fee. A change in risk class by itself won't do it either.
And this last one is super important. You can have multiple, more specific GMDN terms registered, but as long as they all roll up to the same Level 2 parent category, it just counts as one fee. That's a huge clarification.
All right, let's pull all this together in our final section, which is all about avoiding those costly mistakes. Speaking from our experience at I3C Global, where we handle this stuff every day as a UK responsible person service, we see manufacturers accidentally setting themselves up for higher future fees all the time because of simple fixable errors.
It usually comes down to one of three things. First, just like we talked about, registering both a procedure pack and its individual parts separately. Second, choosing GMDN terms that are way too specific or fragmented, which might accidentally map to different Level 2 parents. And number 3 is just hanging on to old legacy GMDN codes that don't really reflect the product anymore. These are exactly the kinds of things you should be looking at and fixing before that 2026 deadline hits.
So let's get to the bottom line. If you walk away with just one single thing from our chat today, let it be this. The MHRA counts a new Level 2 category whenever a registered GMDN term maps to a different Level 2 parent in the official GMDN hierarchy. That's it. That's the entire game.
Which really leaves us with one final, very important question for you. Is your device portfolio's registration strategy ready for April 2026? Now is absolutely the time to audit your GMDN selections and make any corrections. Making sure your registration is accurate and cost-effective? Well, that's exactly why services like our I3C Global MHRA registration service exist. We're here to help you get it right. Prepare now so you can be compliant and cost-effective in the future.